What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show, DFS for Dough here on RotoGrinders. When you see us bringing you content, that means it's time for golf. And it's been about a month since we've had a show here, so happy to be back and bring you some golf talk on a Tuesday night now. Obviously, we switched the schedule around during football season to not compete with Monday Night Football and all the other football shows we've got here on RotoGrinders. So same content, just taped on Tuesday evening instead of Monday evening. So you can generally find us here if you're trying to find us live Tuesday evenings at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. Will be a kind of our go-to time most weeks during football season. So I am Justin Van Zuiden, STL Cardinals 84, here as usual to host the show. I have my usual co-host alongside as well, Mr. Notorious Derek Farnsworth. Noto, it's been like a month since we've done a show. How you doing?
Yeah, it's been too long. It's good to be back, and tried my hand at the DP World Tour. DFS didn't have too much success, so I'm ready to get back to the PGA Tour. What have you been up to the last month?
Not a whole lot. Just getting ready for college football. The college football grind has started, so I'm kind of specializing a little bit more in that this year. And the old days, I tried to juggle about 4 sports in the fall, and it just got to be a little too much. So I've dialed back the NFL content. Still play the DFS, but mainly focusing on golf and MLB and college football now. So cutting back on the NFL, but. So that's a little bit of a burden off, and I had a little bit of free time during the golf off season. Took a little beach trip, and what about you?
Well, that's nice, and that's probably good advice. Anytime they ask me to do anything, I just say yes, and my list of duties keeps growing by the day. But love this time of year. Pretty slow summer with just golf and baseball. So excited for football for sure. But it's my busy season, and I guess you have 2 busy seasons: one for DFS and one for taxes.
Yeah, for sure. And if you extend your tax return, that's due. Those are coming up due October 15th. So the next month will be not nearly as crazy as the busiest time of year, but it'll be a little busy at the day job here over the next month. And then October 15th through the end of the year is a little slower again until we ramp up for a new year. But it's exciting to see golf back this week. It's a little bit of a weird schedule. So in case you haven't kept tabs on it, the old fall swing notion on the PGA Tour is going to be a little bit different now. This is normally the time of year where we'd have a bunch of Korn Ferry Tour graduates coming onto the tour, but they have changed it up this year, and it's called the FedEx Cup Fall, I believe. And so the guys who didn't finish inside the top 50 are still playing for ranking points heading into next season. The new season will start on a calendar year basis. And it's all a little bit different if you're only used to what golf has been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, maybe longer than that on the schedule. So the fall swing is going to look a little bit different than it used to. And also, this is the only PGA Tour event we have in the month of September because we have the Ryder Cup coming up. So a lot of golfers have either A, they're playing in the Ryder Cup, or B, they've just said, hey, this is the only event in September. I'm just going to take the month off. We've got a significantly weaker field than what you would normally see even in some of these fall swing events. But that makes it a little bit interesting, and we'll certainly dig into that. But I mentioned we haven't done a show in a month, so we didn't really recap the playoff events. Pretty incredible playoff performance by Viktor Hovland. Ends up taking home the FedEx Cup Championship there fairly comfortably by the end of the day. Rough finish for Scotty Scheffler, who still can't find the putter. And during the playoff stretch, he kind of misfired on a few other things as well. And with as bad as he putted last year, if anything else went haywire, it was just going to go downhill, and that's what happened for him. So good for Hovland. Ryder Cup teams were announced. Seems to be some momentum building on the Euro side of things in terms of the betting markets. The U.S. was, minus 190, minus 200 a month or two ago. Now it's closer to minus 140, 150, depending on where you look. So, Noto, your thoughts on the upcoming Ryder Cup and the playoffs that just finished up?
Yeah, the playoffs were pretty fun, except for the Tour Championship. It's always a little bit of a letdown on Sunday, especially when it's not very close. But congrats to Victor. I think he shot a 29 on his final 9 at the BMW Championship to come from behind and steal that one. And then you mentioned Scheffler, man. I had him to win the FedEx Cup at like plus 480. And at one point on Thursday, he was like minus 290 to win. He had a 5-stroke lead, and that disappeared very quickly. So, yeah, Scheffler, tough to see him finish the season that way, but I'm sure he'll be back. And as far as the Ryder Cup goes, I mean, all 12 of the European guys are playing at the BMW Championship over in Europe this week, and only, 2 of the 12 American guys are playing the Fortinet. So I kind of wish, they would all play together. I think it's kind of cool that all 12 of them for Europe are playing together over there. But yeah, we'll see. I don't feel great about America's chances, especially what was the last time, 1993 or something that we won over in Europe?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I saw a tweet earlier that Raymond Floyd was on the last team that won over there, and he's 81 years old right now. So, yeah, it has to be at least 30 years then. That's 35, 40 years ago. It's been a rough go for them over there. So, I don't know. I'm kind of on, I talked about this it might not have been on this show, maybe on one of the other ones, but, I want the U.S. to win. I did bet the Euro team to win at plus 180 a few weeks ago. I think the weak bottom part of the Euro team was maybe a little bit overblown. Obviously the Americans have, if you just take the top 6 on both teams, the Americans have more depth, but if you just take the top 6 on both teams, I would almost argue that, especially if Scheffler's play continues the way it was in the playoffs, I think you could give the Euro guys a slight edge on that. And then it's just going to be a matter of, maybe some of those bottom end singles matches, how those play out. But when it's been 30 plus years since the U.S. team has won over there, obviously home course advantage does have some benefits in the Ryder Cup. Crowd gets a little rowdy, starts razzing guys, and you've seen Justin Thomas struggle lately. I don't know. I want the U.S. to win, but I think the odds have corrected into about a good spot now. But when the Euro team was getting to like plus 180, plus 190, to me, that was just a little too lopsided with the game, with the tournament being played over there. So, yeah, I think there was some value on betting the Euro team a few weeks ago, but it's probably gone now.
Yeah, I think so too. And, a lot of our friends in the industry were able to get them at like plus 250 at the start of the year. And I didn't hop on any of those numbers. So now I'm kind of torn on what to do. Mr. Gerg's asking, how did Thomas make the team? For me, I just think he gives them the best chance of scoring the most points. We talked about it a little bit before they made the decision. I was hoping that they would pick JT, and they did. And I was looking at some of the individual markets today for the Ryder Cup, and JT has like the 4th best odds to finish, as a top U.S. scorer. And I think that's kind of why they take him, right? They take him for the upside. If you take Keegan Bradley, maybe he goes 500. If you take Lucas Glover, somebody like that, they could easily get swept. So I like the pick. I mean, obviously he's not playing great, but I think just gives the team a better chance to secure some points. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in love with it at the time, but you bring up a good point that in that format, on the road in a hostile crowd, if you take somebody that's a first timer, just doesn't have that experience, there is a risk of them just kind of completely imploding. So I've kind of come around to being neutral on it. I'm really interested to see how he does this week. I think it's really interesting that he's one of the guys that's playing. Doesn't surprise me that Home was playing. But if it was only going to be 2 guys, I think it's important for Thomas to at least show well this week, so that he's not getting 8,000 questions. I mean, imagine if he shoots, plus 12 or something this week, and then that's all the media wants to talk about. So, but if he goes out and, finishes top 10 or something, then it's probably a non-story. Or maybe he shoots plus 12 and then still goes out and dominates at the Ryder Cup. Anyway, but I'm sure that's what the media is rooting for, because it would just give them 8,000 things to easy content, I guess. But
speaking, did you see him out there with like 10 pool noodles practicing his swing?
Oh, I didn't.
Man, that was a lot going on in that practice session.
And Rory had some comments about, there's certainly other guys I'd rather face than Thomas and stuff. It'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Of course, that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're still kind of figuring out what we're going to do on the content side for that. Obviously, probably won't be enough to do a show for that. But Noto and I think last time we did a little combo article on the site, so we can run that back maybe again this year. But before we get there, we've got to talk about the Fortinet Championship this week. I mentioned it, weaker field than what we normally see in some of these fall events, just because of the timing on the calendar with the Ryder Cup coming up in a couple of weeks. And so you're going to see, maybe a little bit more unpredictability, guys that are going to feel overpriced. You're not going to like the way your lineups look maybe, but Noto, why don't you talk about the course that we have this week?
Yes, we got Napa Valley, so should be a lot of guys drinking some wine this week. It's going to be played at the Silverado Resort and Spa.
Yep.
Par 72 measures just over 7,100 yards, and there's not really a strong course fit, I would say. The fairways, some of the narrowest that you're going to see on the PGA Tour. The average driving accuracy last year was like 46%, so it's going to be very difficult to hit the fairways, whether you are being aggressive off the tee or trying to lay back and just put an emphasis on hitting the fairway. The green's pretty small as well, and they feature a mix of bent and POA. So I'm kind of looking for guys that have played well in California in the past. Course history is not too important, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Yeah, I don't really have a strong take on the fit. I think you're going to have to be good with your irons and very good on the greens. But I've seen some people say, the Bombers can play well here because everyone's missing fairways. But I looked at the average driving distance here the last couple of years, and it's like well below tour average. So I don't think guys are necessarily just going out and ripping it. I'm looking more for the approach guys and the good putters.
Yeah, I'm maybe willing to sprinkle one, or at most two kind of risk reward, maybe drivers, guys. I'm prioritizing approach play for sure, but don't mind maybe throwing a bomber here or there into a lineup, especially if, nobody's going to play them and maybe they have some upside. So we can talk about some of those guys later in the show. But otherwise, yeah, emphasis on approach play for sure for me. And don't mind getting a little bit contrarian in spots. Some of these weaker fields, it just gets a little bit unpredictable. Chalk kind of congregates around a few plays. Noto's got some wild takes in our expert survey this week that I've got to call him out on. Noto did the survey before me this week, so I was looking at it and wondering, how does Noto think this guy's going to win? Noto never likes this guy. So we'll talk about that. We'll get to that very soon. But it's just a course where, a tournament, given the timing on the calendar, where maybe you can embrace a little bit of variance this week as well. All right, well, let's dig in. The only 4 golfers above 10K on DraftKings this week, and DraftKings is really the only pricing we have to look at. FanDuel has punted.
It's out. FanDuel pricing's out.
Oh, okay. So FanDuel, a little bit delayed. Yeah. I just presumed they weren't offering contests this week because their pricing wasn't out. That must have come out within the last few hours then.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. I'm surprised.
All right. So for now, I have not had a chance to look at FanDuel's pricing yet because it wasn't out as of like 4:00 this afternoon. But we usually focus on the DraftKings side of things anyways. But 4 golfers above 10K, Homa and Thomas, the 2 Ryder Cup guys, DFS, Darling Yeager and Cameron Davis are our 10K plus golfers this week. Pretty hard to not start with Homa, I think, here.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there. In my model, he's got like 14 more percentage points than anyone else in the field. And coming off of 5 straight top 13 finishes, back-to-back winner here. He's won 3 times in California. He's a class of the field in terms of the talent. So I can't really find a reason to fade Homa other than ownership, but I think I would rather just eat the ownership and look to differentiate elsewhere. What about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, when you look at the form, he generally plays well in California. He finished the 2022-2023 season strong. Obviously got the momentum heading into the Ryder Cup, back-to-back champion of this event. Pretty hard to ignore Homa. I mean, I've been talking for months now about I haven't played Thomas. I do think you can make a case for Thomas this week. for sure. But I mean, if you're just looking for one lineup or, your optimal build, it has to be Homa. It's not like he's, hurricane priced above everybody else. It's only 500 more than Thomas and let's say 800 more than Jaeger. So yeah, I think it's Homa. I don't have a ton of interest in Davis and Jaeger, but I might sprinkle a little JT in there this week just because of the weak field. And, maybe he gets dialed in and a little bit of a break has done him good getting ready for the Ryder Cup. So I don't mind some Thomas and GPPs, but yeah, it's clearly Homa, I think, for me at the top.
Yeah, Mr. Gerg in the chat definitely disagrees. He says, imagine playing Homa over Jaeger. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? His guy Jaeger, he has been in really good form, top 35 and 5 straight. Doesn't have a great history around these parts and not the best putter, but he's probably my second favorite guy above 10K. Yeah, I don't have a strong take on anyone else. I think just with so much Homa exposure, I don't think I'm going to have much of any of the other 10K options.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Not that I think that the other guys are not good plays, just not enough of a salary gap, I think, to make a difference for me. So I think it's Homa, maybe a sprinkle of Thomas and GPPs, and then we move down into the 9K range, so I have to start with this. And so I'm looking at Noto's stuff, and I see that he has picked Bo Hostler to win the tournament. And, we've always joked about Bo Hostler, the Texas guy that everybody in DFS loves to play for no reason. And this tournament, last I checked, is not in Texas. And Hostler is projected at 15% ownership. And Noto's telling me that he's going to win. And I'm wondering if maybe somebody else, wrote the article and then passed it off as Noto, because certainly this can't be Noto writing this. So you have to explain this Hostler thing to me. It has me completely befuddled.
Yeah, my account was not hacked. Don't worry. This is my take, and honestly, I bet him outright, so I'm gonna be more invested in that than I am in DFS. But I will have some. So he played really well in the fall, and he's contended here twice. So he's got 3 straight top 25 finishes here. 2 of those he just fell apart on the Sunday. And then you look at his recent form, the game log. He gained 7.6 strokes ball striking his last time out. That's the best in his entire career. One of the best putters in the field, one of the best, birdie maker, bogey avoiders in the field. I just think it's a good week for him. And yeah, I don't know. I just got that gut feeling about him. But I mean, the model doesn't agree with me. So if I just blindly trusted the numbers, I would be with you.
All right. So I don't know. Noto's had a few antacids or something, has just totally changed his take on Hostler there. It'll be really interesting. I'm now invested in seeing how he does, simply because I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not poo-pooing the take or anything like that. Just was shocked that trying to reconcile that it actually came from Noto. So I'm not on him, certainly not to that extent. But you look at all the guys in here, everybody's going to feel overpriced, right? 9,400 for Todd, 9,200 for Spawn. Thigala, we always have talked about, trying to figure out what he does best. He's kind of all over the place. And right now we've got Thigala with the second highest ownership in the field. So I'm certainly not interested in that. I think Eric Cole is probably my favorite in here. You look at his summer, hasn't missed a cut in his last 10 starts, did manage to make it inside the top 50 of the playoffs. Just a classic late bloomer, first full year with a tour card at age 35, had a really solid season. I think 10 top 10s, or 10 top 25s rather. And like I said, hadn't missed a cut in his last 10 starts. So I think if you're looking for the safer option here, I think Cole is the guy. If you really like the ball striking, shorter hitters, Todd could certainly be a fit. I think JJ Spawn is someone interesting for tournaments as well. What else do you like here in the 9K range?
Yeah, cash game, small field stuff. You mentioned Todd. I like him quite a bit. Andrew Putnam as well. They have very similar skill sets. They're accurate off the tee. They're underrated on their approach, and then, very good putters. So I think they're very safe at 94, 9,100. Then if you want to make the argument that if everyone's going to be missing fairways, it's probably a bonus to the guys that usually miss fairways. Thigala, Eric Cole, Alex Noren. I think they're all interesting tournament plays. Noren's finally playing well again after a really tough 2022-2023 season. Tigala, who I never seem to get right, is actually rating out well for me this week. And he's a California guy, T6 here last year, 3 for 3 at the event. So I think there's some strong options. If Homa wasn't in the field, I would probably just dip down here and play 2 or 3 of them. But you can probably only pair, I don't know, have you built lineups yet? I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because unless you like some stuff in the 6Ks, which I really don't, I think you're kind of, 7,300. After you get there, it gets kind of tough. So, yeah, I mean, if you try to get like Homa and say Homa and Cole for me, or Homa and Hostler for you, it does get a little tough.
Yeah, and so you definitely can't do 2 of them with Homa. So, yeah, I mean, the 6Ks, we'll talk about it, but I don't like anybody.
Yeah, I don't really
6K.
either.
So it's tough, but the 9K range is really strong. And I think with so much ownership going to Homa, it could be an interesting build to play, a couple of them in lieu of Homa.
I don't hate that idea. If you are completely fading the top, I think, and I think that will be somewhat contrarian because people will be nervous, I think, to fade both Homa and Thomas. So, yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's an interesting approach for GPPs. I would probably start with Cole. Then maybe you could pair him with, Spawn or Putnam or somebody in there. And I think I read that as part of your content as well. I think you like Norin in this range as well this week.
Yeah, I mentioned him kind of with Tigala and Eric Cole as guys that are really bad off the tee and pretty solid everywhere else. So if everyone's going to be missing fairways, maybe that's a boost to guys like that.
All right. And when I was processing Noto's take on Hostler to win the tournament earlier today, I looked to see what Hondizzle wrote, and Hondizzle has picked Webb Simpson to win the tournament. And I'm wondering what on earth is everybody? Everybody's found the gummies or something over this month-long break. I can get on board with Hostler, I think, before I can get on board with Webb at 8,900. But that doesn't surprise me as much from Hondizzle because Hondizzle kind of likes Webb. So, and I think was kind of on him a little bit as we headed into the later part of the summer. And to Webb's credit, he's been playing a little better than he did, throughout 2023. But it's a small victory there. But I don't love a whole lot here in this range. Like Herbert is kind of a no thanks. I like Akshay, but Akshay chalk, I don't know if I like. Montgomery hasn't done much. I just don't love a whole lot here in the like 84 to 8,900 range. I much prefer the slightly more expensive 9K guys.
So now I'm curious, what was your hot take of the week? Because maybe you need to be partaking in the gummies as well.
Mine was, I believe, Jaeger and Thigala both missed the cut, I think.
Okay, that's pretty spicy.
Yeah, it's spicy, but I couldn't find I certainly couldn't find a winner take as spicy as Webb and Hostler, and I also didn't want to do one of those and then end up, my guy finishes the worst of the 3 because then I'm giving you all this crap and then my guy ends up doing worse, so I'd have egg on my face.
Yeah, well, when our guys finish 1-2,
I'll own it. I'll eat a marshmallow peep on there.
All right, 8K range. I like 3 guys. So I like Ches Reavie, 8,500. He's been playing pretty well. He's more of the accuracy iron type. Maybe not the best putter, but he's played well here in the past. He's made 4 of the last 5 cuts with top 35s and 4 of them. I like Justin Suh, another guy from California, was born there, went to USC. So I think he's familiar with the area. And I was looking at this today. He has gained at least 1 stroke putting in 14 straight events. Like, that's so hard to do for the most volatile stat in golf. So if he can have a decent ball striking week, I know that's kind of asking a lot, but I like him at 8,600. And then Mark Hubbard, I always like Mark Hubbard. He kind of fits the same mold as Eric Cole, and that very bad off the tee, very good on approach, and then, pretty good short game as well. So I think they have very similar skill sets, and Hubbard's a little bit cheaper than Cole at 8,300.
Yeah, I like Hubbard as well. I think he's very steady, solid play in this range, which I think is just fine. And to me, just 2 guys that I like, and that I think are really interesting in here. The other, of course, is Doug Gim, who over the last 24 rounds leads this field in ball striking. So again, it's a weak field, but if you're leading the field in ball striking, you're doing something right. He's 100th and something in putting, which is no surprise. So it just needs to bring the flat stick at a semi-reasonable level, and I think he'll certainly be fine. So, yeah, I think the bottom part of the 8K range is what I like better. Gim, Hubbard. We saw Streelman even play in a little bit better later in the summer. So I like these guys better than the higher part of the 8K range. I can get on board with Suh as well. He's probably my favorite of that higher end 8K range. But I like Gim, Hubbard, Streelman, I think, in the lower 8K range. And then 7,900, I talked about maybe taking a sprinkle on guys who can drive it. Again, you don't want to load up your roster, but guys like Taylor Pendrith and Peter Quest is probably my favorite. We saw him in a couple of weak field events over the summer. The Rocket Mortgage, he finished 4th. And then the John Deere, he also finished top 20. So weaker field event, he can make birdies when he gets it going. And, if he can just be semi-accurate, if he's trying to use his driver, I think he is one guy that probably a little bit of risk for sure, but could potentially give you some upside. So Peter Quest at 7,900, I do like as we start to head into that range. What do you like in the upper part of the 7Ks?
Yeah, don't mind the Quest take. Definitely on board with Gim as well. Other 7K options that I don't mind. Dylan Wu has been very consistent over the last 6 months. He actually rates out 4th in the stat model that I ran this week, which is a little surprising. 7,600, pretty good price point there. And then I like Nate Lashley at 7,400. A guy that tends to play well in California. Nearly won Pebble Beach a couple years ago and a couple top 20 finishes here. So he's a guy that can make a lot of birdies. Other than that, I mean, maybe Sam Stevens in large field stuff. Cam Champ has won here before, tends to play the same course as well over and over again. So if you want to play that narrative, Chesson Hadley, a couple top 25s here. But these are guys that are usually in the 6K range, so it doesn't feel great paying mid 7,000s for them.
Yeah, well, they're still better than the stuff that we do have in the 6K range. I mean, I don't mind pairing a couple of these guys together if you need it. Don't mind some of the calls you made there. Stevens, I think, is another guy that I'm pretty interested in. You mentioned Wu, so those are guys I like as well. I might end up being somewhat chalky. I mean, I'll see where ownership ends up coming out here, but I think Andrew Novak is also grading out very well in our RotoGrinders projections. Again, I don't really have a strong take here or there. I mean, we've seen some of these guys in the lower 7Ks pop from time to time. We've seen Callum Tarrant have good stretches and really bad stretches. We've seen like Neesmith have really good stretches, and then, he tends to fall apart for a while. So with the weak nature of this field, you're going to get a whole lot of golfers that make you feel uncomfortable once you get to the 7K range and under. So, or 7,200, I guess, and under. Like Carson Young, I was on quite a bit during the summer, but then he really faded towards the end. Just not going to be that consistent cut maker, guy you feel super comfortable clicking in this range. So is there anything else above 7K that you find remotely interesting?
You could have just said, is there anyone else? Because I don't have
Is there anyone else, period, that you find remotely interesting?
No, unfortunately not. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Baddeley has some good course history. You mentioned Carson Young. I don't hate it, but I would much rather play the high 7s if you can.
Zach Blair, 2nd, miscut, 13th, miscut. His last 6 starts before the fall break here. So
the pride of Utah, according to announcers, the week he finished 2nd.
There you go. And he is a guy that can tend to pop on the shorter courses. I just had to, throw a name out here I think he's under 7K. Yeah, he's 6,800. Russell Knox. What happened to Russell Knox? Poor guy's all the way down to 6,800 in this field, and we aren't even mentioning his name outside of me just randomly throwing it out there just now. But it's a pretty rough. We don't have I'm scrolling down from 6,600 to the bottom, and we don't have anybody projected over 2% ownership. So,
Mr. Gerg in the chat brings up Eric Van Rooyen. couple top 20s in his last 2 starts. Guy that used to be pretty good, so maybe he's turning something around.
Yeah, and
7,100 though.
he's kind of looking like one of the more popular options in this range. Where is he? I lost him. I just saw him a minute ago. Yeah, we've got him at 10% ownership right now. We've got Badley at 4%. Looks like he's grading out one of the best projection guys in that range, but not a whole lot else to love. Again, pretty weak field. And there's decent options with those guys that we mentioned around 74, 7,500 that I think, you just try to take maybe 2 guys in there, 3 if you need it, to round out your rosters because it drops off in a hurry. Now, I mentioned you can embrace the variance in this tournament. And if you want to go, just YOLO somebody down here, certainly there are worse ideas. I mean, you could play a Martin Laird or, somebody that we've seen with upside from time to time. Just tough to pick who that's going to be and feel pretty good about it. So, anything else? Given that this is the only tournament in about a 6-week stretch, we can probably skip the snake draft and bring that back when the tournaments start coming more regularly. But have a hunch we might have trouble filling that live tonight, and don't want to give anybody the dead air time. So, anything else for you?
I think that'll do it. Excited for the week. Excited for the Ryder Cup. Hopefully, U.S. can put up a fight, and if not, it'll be good for everyone to bet on Europe, like yourself.
Yeah, as I've got the edge. I did not go crazy on it, so in theory, I still would like to see the U.S. win. The entertainment value of seeing them win would be better than the small sum that I put on it. But yeah, so that's coming up in Rome in a couple of weeks. So there are no PGA Tour events for the rest of September. So the Ryder Cup will be right at the end of the month, heading into October 1st. And then it resets to what used to be the fall schedule, which, again, the schedule is largely the same. The way that they're framing it from the points and things of that nature is what's changing. And you kind of need like a degree in actuarial science to figure out how the PGA Tour is putting together like the rankings and the points heading to next year. I tried to figure it all out this afternoon, and I quickly lost interest.
I don't think they know. They're just.
It was like a 30-point flow chart of everything, and I just said forget it for now. So it's not worth trying to sound smart because I confused me. But anyway, once we get to October, we've got the Sanderson Farms, the Shriners Children's Open in Vegas, and the Zozo Championship, which I believe is going back over to Asia this year. So that will be the tournaments in October. Then we've got a tournament in Los Cabos, Mexico. Then we've got the Bermuda Championship and the RSM in November. So kind of the usual schedule that we have this time of year, just a different way for the PGA Tour to frame it. And we just have to get through the Ryder Cup first. So come October, we will have the usual fall calendar rolling through, and we'll be bringing you a show for those events when they get back rolling. A little bit shorter here tonight, just with this being the only tournament in September and the field being extremely weak. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks to Steve for producing for us behind the scenes. Thanks to Noto for joining back up with me for another fall of golf talk. I am Justin. Good luck to all of you with your lineups this week as well, and we will catch you back here in a few weeks after the Ryder Cup. Take care, everybody.